Morning glory and evening grace, America, as I promised all day. Richard Goldberg joins us. He is with the senior director at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and he was in the Trump first term at the National Security Council with the Iran portfolio. In the Trump second term, he helped stand up the National Energy Dominance Council with Secretaries Burgum and Wright, who you've heard here a lot. They went back to the FDD to study Iran, and boy, what a timely time it is. Richard, welcome to the Hugh Show. Great to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
So, Richard, since President Trump appeared on the program, 2 weeks and 2 days ago, and said he's going to hit Iran harder than he's ever been hit before, they have ever been hit before if they keep killing people. I've had on Mark Duvitz, your colleague. I've had on Michael Duran from Hudson. I've had on Ben Talablu, your colleague. I will have on Kareem Sajapur, I think Thursday. Aviv Reddy Gore from Israel, you. I'm doing my best to get people ready for what will be a very big kinetic collision if it happens. Do you think it's going to happen with Iran?
I do think something is going to happen. I think the president is a president of determination, commitment. I think he likely has his mind already set on some sort of outcome here and has asked his senior advisors to make sure his options are set and the force posture matches the options that are most aligned with what he wants to achieve. And I think he knows that as more and more of this information comes out, the intelligence that gets leaked, as some of the internet peaks back on in Iran, as phone calls are being made, as pictures and videos come out, he and the rest of the world sees that a red line that he drew was obliterated by this regime. He is aware of that. The promises of no executions apparently have continued in secret as well. And when you start seeing a death toll in the tens upon tens of thousands, with more still in secret locations being held, with more executions potentially on the way, that alone, of course, obliterates the red line. But he also sees a regime that's teetering. He sees historic opportunity. And as he told you, he's already in many ways sealed his fate in history as somebody like Ronald Reagan who changes the world, whether it's last June with the B-2 bombers, Operation Midnight Hammer, whether it's the most recent operation against Maduro, the Abraham Accords before that. But you know what? Ronald Reagan brought down the Soviet Union, a major threat to the United States, transformed the entire world scene. This president could still bring down one of those major threats that is world-changing, world history-changing, if he contributes to the collapse of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
And in so doing, if that happens, having cut off the People's Republic of China from Venezuelan oil, he may succeed in cutting off Iran from sending hot oil to China. They'll have to buy their oil on the world market. It's not that they won't get oil, it's just that they will pay a lot more for it, Richard. Does that not serve our strategic interests as well?
100%. I mean, I think if you, for some reason, don't care at all about 35,000 people being mass murdered in 48 hours and executions going on, you just say, not our issue, not our national interest. And for some reason, you didn't even care about the fact that Iran, as the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, continues to plot war against the United States, has tried to assassinate the president of the United States while he was out of office, will most certainly try to assassinate him again if they remain in power after he leaves office, and all of the other bad things they do to tie us down in the region, all the Gold Star families around the country who have grieving, have lost loved ones, whether in Iraq, Beirut, Khobar Towers over many years, in Israel, Gaza, all these different places because of the Islamic Republic of Iran. If for some reason you didn't see that as a major national security threat to us, but you subscribe to great power competition, you say it's all about China, that's our greatest existential threat of the century, then let me tell you about why the president is executing the most brilliant grand strategy in history right now for the United States and taking apart the axis of enablers for the top axis of aggressors against the United States. As China starts seeing all of its chess pieces falling off the board, as Russia starts seeing its chess pieces falling off the board. Started with Assad collapsing in Syria, and then Iran being able to do nothing as the president obliterates its nuclear program. Maduro being taken out in the middle of the night in 15 minutes by Delta Force. China is seeing all of its Belt and Road initiatives, all of its investments all of its key supply lines being threatened potentially, all the aggressors that are these middle powers that can threaten the United States and distract us potentially being taken off the game board. And remember, for China, heavily dependent on energy imports, one of their key weaknesses. 50% of their energy imports come through the Strait of Hormuz. That's obviously Saudi and the rest of the Gulf, plus Iran. But if Iran is no longer a threat there, if you're able to constrain that oil supply, and you've taken off the ability for Maduro to supply a few 100,000 barrels per day going up from Venezuela as well, they are left with the potential of having to rely on, guess who? The United States of America, from whom they could be buying more oil, and other partners where we would have strong relations, and obviously the U.S. Navy, the ability to interdict in time of conflict. That's bad grand strategy for China. That's very good grand strategy for us.
So, Richard Goldberg, I believe that if the president fails to strike at Iran, it will dent the deterrence that he has so masterfully rebuilt in the first year following the disastrous years of the locust under Joe Biden. However, I also don't believe that's going to happen. I think what he was doing with me, and then he followed with Sean Hannity, and he followed with Tony DeCopel, and he did it on True Social, was trying to prevent violence. It did not work. Ever since then, since the massacre, and you used the term 35,000, I've seen now today as high as 40,000. That's almost unimaginable, but the president is a visual person. Do you think he has a good flow of information from inside Iran as to exactly how widespread the massacre was?
I think that picture is increasing and the flow of information is obviously accelerating. I do actually think that it's possible he did not have a good flow of information that first weekend when the massacres were taking place. Most mainstream media were downplaying the reports that I and others were hearing from inside of Iran. The leading opposition news source, Iran International, was reporting throughout the weekend 5,000 and 12,000. We were hearing a lot of the stories that are now being confirmed through the weekend, but you would hear from a lot of sources in government that's just not matching what we're hearing so far, both here in the United States, in Great Britain, and elsewhere, where we would rely on the intelligence community to validate rumors coming out of Iran. There's no way to deny what's happening now. Millions of people came out in the streets. There was mass murder. The blood is still stained across Tehran and other major cities. People are still trying to identify their loved ones who are being held hostage even as dead bodies throughout Iran right now. The fear of a continued crackdown if anybody else comes out into the streets, but also understanding that this is a regime that teeters. Why did people come out into the streets? There was an economic crisis that Donald Trump helped facilitate and accelerate. There has been the snapback of UN sanctions, and so there's an understanding in the market that the old Iran nuclear deal is never coming back. Banks were teetering on the edge of collapse. One did collapse. There's a water crisis because of the mismanagement of this maniacal, corrupt regime. There is a power energy crisis where the grid is experiencing blackouts throughout Iran. So people hate this regime. They already hate them for what they do to the people repression-wise, as you can see. They hate them because their standard of living continues to go down into the gutter. This has spread from upper class to middle class to lower class, religious, secular, all across Iran. And if millions of people were willing to take to the streets, but right now are deterred by machine guns and IRGC forces out there, if those IRGC forces somehow are dispersed, have to run away themselves, stands to reason millions of people would come back into the streets if they see help on the way, as the president promised. And frankly, we long term, whether or not this collapses tomorrow, remember 1978 to 1979 took a year before the Shah had to flee Iran. Even if this is a long term situation and this regime does not immediately collapse, or the supreme leader is taken out and you don't have a full change in regime, the RGC steps in, a different successor from the mullah step in. If you're able to use this opportunity to continue to degrade and dismantle a direct threat to the United States, a direct tool of the CCP in China and Putin in Moscow, by degrading their missile program, their Navy, their drone program, and their command and control, you do a great service to the United States. You enforce a red line and show the enemies of America this president continues to mean business. And maybe, yes, you give the opportunity for millions of Iranians to come back out and take this country back for Iran, which will be a game changer for U.S. national security.
Don't go anywhere. I'm coming right back with Richard Goldberg, Senior Director at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, FDD.org, and you can follow him at Richard Goldberg on X. I'll make sure I get the right. Is there a middle initial in there, Richard, or is it just Richard Goldberg?
Just at Rich_Goldberg. The underscore
At
catches people sometimes.
at Rich_Goldberg. He's one of the people I tell you should follow routinely online because there are a whole bunch of people with opinions about Iran, but there aren't that many with actual firsthand knowledge of having worked the portfolio at the NSC. Richard has. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with Rich Goldberg from the FDD after these messages. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt with Richard Goldberg, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. For years, and Trump won, had the portfolio over Iran sanctions, trying to rebuild some kind of pressure on Iran after Team Obama gave the world away to them, including pallets of cash. He came back in term 2 at the beginning of it to stand up the Energy Dominance Council and to try and repair the damage done by 4 years of Biden appeasement. Hypothetical entirely, Richard, before we go back to the reality of strike list and priorities. Had Barack Obama not gone belly up on Iran in his first term and then pursued the JCPOA in his second term, would this regime have already fallen? Did Obama save it?
Oh, he saved it several times. I mean, 2009, the last time we remember, the first time we remember a mass uprising starting in Iran after what people understood to be a stolen election. They don't have elections in Iran, they have selections in Iran. And you had this sort of mass uprising in Tehran suburbs taking place. It was an upper middle class revolt, and they put that down with force. And Barack Obama sent the love letters behind people's back to the supreme leader saying, I want to have a good relationship. By the way, I've seen those letters when I was working in the White House. This was unimaginable. He abandoned the people in the street because he wanted a nuclear deal, because he internalized this anti-American ideology that we were actually to blame for all of our problems with Iran. He believed in the false narrative of a coup that the CIA was behind, that the Iranian regime has put out for years. He believed that you needed to have a balance of power in the region, let Iran have a little more power, and that would offset the Saudi power and the Israeli power, and then we would have this great equilibrium, and kumbaya would happen, and we just needed to get to a nuclear deal because, hey, they have grievances, and we should understand that.
Richard,
So
it's not
whether
very
that's
relevant, but I want you follow. Has anything been heard from the Metternich of MS Now, Ben Rhodes? Has President Obama said anything about the massacre of tens of thousands of people? Have the people who kept the Ayatollahs in power, have they had the decency to come forward and condemn the regime that they parlayed with?
No, because they're out there working the media right now to say it's over, too late, can't do anything, too dangerous to act, don't know what would come next, could be worse if the supreme leader were to go. That's who's behind a lot of those news stories and headlines that you see out there. It's Team Obama, Ben Rhodes out there still trying to hope for a day where they get back to appeasement as the policy with this regime. However, I will say that for many people who are, let's call them normal, more mainstream, clearly don't agree with them on a lot of policy issues, but they went along with that because they're Democrats. They believe this is what we have to do. This is Barack Obama's foreign policy, so I'll get on the train. They are looking at, you say 40,000. They're seeing at the numbers right now. They're seeing the pictures, the videos. Those types of people on the left and in the center cannot justify the JCPOA anymore, cannot justify an appeasement policy anymore, are looking at this idea of having a negotiation with this regime with everything going on right now, saying, are you kidding me? This regime has to end up in the ash heap of history. The sooner the better. So, yes, there are ideologues out there. And we remember some of them who served in the Biden administration, too, like Rob Malley, the special envoy for Iran, who was kicked out for being a little too close to the Iranians, perhaps, and many others. They might be rooting against the Iranian people right now. They might be trying to, in sinister ways, influence the president not to act. But I think the vast majority of Americans see what's happening here, see a red line declared, see what this regime is capable of against its own people, know that it's capable of building more and more missiles to use against us and our allies, and knows that this is a historic time to take advantage of for our national security.
So, Richard, there are lots of different definitions of what we're aiming for. Some people want regime negotiations, and if we are to believe, one of those includes Special Envoy Witkoff, but he's been involved in some head fakes of extraordinary proportions. There's regime coercion, which is what's going on in Venezuela. There's regime evolution, which is what we hope goes on long term in Venezuela to free and fair elections and democracy return. Then there's regime punishment and just simply a punitive strike saying, what you have done here is beyond the bounds of what the West will tolerate. That's what President Trump did in term one vis-a-vis Assad when he used chemical weapons. And then there's regime change, which involves Iraq in 2003, Afghanistan in 2001. I'm in favor of at least regime punishment. In other words, just a simple punitive strike. And we can talk about target lists. Where are you in that option, Richard Goldberg? What would you like to see happen as a strategic goal?
Yeah, I am at the very least regime punishment, but I would like to see the facilitation of regime collapse and transition. That does not mean boots on the ground. It does not mean an occupation. It does not mean the United States literally going to Tehran to do things, though. If somehow the president and General Kane and Director Ratcliffe can pull a rabbit out of the hat and there's some incredible operation like nobody imagined in Caracas that just suddenly happens, I would be impressed with that. I would not be predicting that. It would seem high risk and dangerous. But who knows? This president and this team around him have proven everybody else that we can't really expect the unexpected with their planning at the moment. However, given the normal set of facts in front of us, the parameters that we would imagine, what we would be willing to do, what this president should be willing to do, and what he should not be willing to do, given the risks to U.S. Personnel, I think it is quite appropriate, A, to make sure they are punished for going across the red line, but B, take this moment, seize this moment to continue to squeeze, to degrade, to dismantle. And the weaker and weaker and weaker they get, the stronger and stronger the people get. And yes, you will see some sort of transition at some point. This regime cannot continue. If banks are collapsing because the president enforces his threat of 25% tariffs against all neighboring countries of Iran, and the cash flow stops moving from daily trade, and you actually use either by naval forces like you saw in Venezuela or kinetic action or cyber action, some sort of prevention of the oil flowing out of Karg Island, you will force an immediate liquidity crisis. You will accelerate what is already a liquidity crisis. More banks will fail. There will be a massive inability to pay the IRGC payroll. That would be very, uncertain for what happens next to that regime alone, just internally with fracturing. If you were to take out kinetically command and control, if you were to disrupt communications, at the same time that you also
But do we have to
take
see
out
it,
the more.
Richard? Does the American
Yeah.
people and the rest of the world have to see what it is that the United States does as a reaction to the massacre? Because if it doesn't, I don't know that the red line isn't erased anyway. I think they have to see it.
Well, of course they have to see it. You mean could there just be a cyber
Right.
event and then you just say that's
Right.
the no? There's no way. There's no way that that is sufficient at this point, based on what the president has promised, what he has suggested, and what if you're Xi Jinping, if you're Vladimir Putin, and you're expecting if you were to default now, moving a carrier strike group there, moving all these squadrons, building up a force posture, and then just saying, hey, I had a cyber event and we'll call it a day. I think that would be laughed out of the room. The president certainly knows that, and I think we should have a little bit of level setting here. It's not like Xi and Putin don't believe the president is willing to use force. He has proven it, certainly over the last year and in his first term. He has just taken a dictator out of Caracas. I think they have to know he's serious. But you stop enforcing your red lines, that can change quickly.
I'll be right back with Richard Goldberg of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. We're going to talk about risks to American personnel in the region, and then we're going to talk about target lists in our last two segments on today's Iran in Focus hours. Stay tuned. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The biggest story in the world remains Iran and whether or not the United States strikes and if Israel joins in with it. Richard Goldberg, I want to talk about target sets now. I've asked all of the experts, and I'll ask Kareem when he comes on to finish my week of experts on Iran. Why don't we hit Karg Island? Because it and the two other oil terminals are the only hard currency generators that this regime has to pay its terrorists with. Why don't we do that?
This is the number one source of revenue for the regime. If you stop the flow of oil, then you are on an egg timer for how long the regime can survive. I will add that I also think we underestimate the importance of border trade just in its very near circle of influence and neighbors. If you actually stop some of that daily trade and the currency transfers and the cash access, you will also accelerate liquidity crises inside the banking system. But yes, we have long had this option. And obviously, on sanctions alone, we saw this happen in Venezuela as well. You have an immediate impact in the market. Normal actors, normal corporations, and by the way, even state-owned enterprises of China shy away from completing a transaction because they don't want to suffer the blow of a cutoff from the U.S. financial system, which is the punishment under U.S. sanctions. And so, for the Chinese at least, they resort to illicit activity. They set up these so-called teapot refineries. These are unofficial, sort of supposedly disconnected from state-owned enterprises. They have a ghost tanker fleet, just like what you saw in Venezuela. A lot of those, by the way, were the Iranian ghost tanker fleet. When you saw the U.S. seizing them, they seized them with U.S. sanctions attached from the Revolutionary Guard Corps. So you have all these ghost tankers bringing oil out of Kharg Island, chugging along. We let them go all the way through the strait. We let them go all the way to China, deliver it. We know exactly who they are, where they're coming from, what cargo they got, and when they unload. And by the way, who has the offtake agreements after they hit the teapot refineries? The state-owned oil companies of China. So we have always had the ability to escalate against Beijing in just a sanctions realm to get them to try to cut off the transactions. Obviously, that's complicated in a very complicated bilateral relationship, and maybe there's reasons in a trade war and other things we haven't gone that direction. There are other ways to exert that influence. The president has tried a tariff threat now. That doesn't seem to have worked so far. We haven't enforced it yet that I've seen in the face of Chinese continuing to ignore that. He is now moving a carrier strike group. That comes with 3 destroyers. He already had 3 destroyers on station. Does he envision some sort of naval armada, a quarantine again, like what we saw in Venezuela, to start seizing the very large tankers coming out of Kharg Island and not let the oil flow, start having contracts canceled, and simply de facto stop the oil transactions from taking place?
Okay, Richard, you're a student of history. We spent a lot of World War II trying to hit Hitler's capacity to produce oil and to deny him the ability to get to the oil fields in the Soviet Union. Why don't we just blow up the refineries? They can be rebuilt under a new regime.
We have that option set. The truth is that if you go back to the 12-day war, it's not like this option set wasn't on the table. And by the way, that target set was on the table for the Israelis as well during 12 days of their own airstrikes. And with the exception of a couple of fuel depots near Tehran, they avoided hitting energy infrastructure. Why is that? Why is it that we hesitate to do that? Well, in the end, if you are a military planner, if you're advising the president, you say, well, Mr. President, if we hit their energy, then they will have a proportional response, which will be to hit other energy, whether that be to mine the Strait of Hormuz and deny Saudi oil from moving out to the market, or hit Saudi oil infrastructure itself and try to create a massive catastrophic disruption event for the market. Couple of responses to that the president should know about. Number one, then give me at the top of the target list, we're going to hit the missiles, the drones, and the IRGC Navy first, and take that threat off the board. Why do we keep having to be deterred by that threat? And number two, this is a different oil market today because of Donald J. Trump. And we should understand that this is China's pressure point, not ours. 50% of China's oil imports comes through the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians want to mine that strait. They want to attack Saudi oil. Won't be good. I'm not saying we won't have a short-term price spike because it is a global commodity, but we're not going to run out of oil here. We're going to be okay, and we'll get the strait back open fast. And I don't think there will be any government facilities left in Tehran afterwards from what the president would do in response.
Richard, thank you. I've been through a lot of experts, and they all say we got to worry about our Gulf Cooperation Council allies, and we do, and MBZ is our best ally, and MBS is a rising ally, and we got to worry about world oil markets. But Canada's coming online with a lot of heavy crude, and we got a lot of heavy crude, and Venezuela's got a lot of everything that Iran's got. I just don't understand why it's not at the top of the target list. But my last segment with Richard's coming up because we do have to discuss risk to Americans. Stay tuned. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh. Richard Goldberg is the senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. He's been in Trump 1 and Trump 2. He's an Iran expert. We have a lot of assets in the region, Rich. I know that families of people who are on the Lincoln, and I've had family on the Lincoln, no, not right now, are wondering, hey, can they hit the Lincoln? Can they hit the destroyers? Can they hit our base in Qatar? We saw a demonstration attack after Midnight Hammer. We saw Israel hammered a lot, I think 30 dead. We've seen them hit al-Assad with ballistic missiles, precision strikes on al-Assad in whatever year that was, that they blew up al-Assad. I had friends and family on al-Assad at that point that got off. How much can they hurt us with their ballistic missile capacity?
They can definitely target U.S. bases in the region through their ballistic missiles. They also have cruise missile capacity as well. We saw that utilized against the Saudi oil infrastructure back in 2019, along with drones. So long as we keep our naval forces far away with our standoff capabilities, whether that be Tomahawk strikes or fighter jets off the boat, we should be outside of their striking distance to our naval forces. They do not have much of an air defense left, if any. Any that would be still there will be accounted for both by the Growlers on the aircraft carrier. Those are the electronic warfare fighter squadrons that we have, the EA-18Gs, and also the fact that the Israelis sort of took out all of the Russian air defense already, the Iranian knockoff of the Russian air defense. It's not to say you couldn't have an oopsie, but the threat is much lower from an air perspective if there are any
You remember
air
the
assets
Argentinians hit that British boat? I can't remember the name of the ship that they sunk in the Falklands.
You can't have a total prediction here. You have to. There can always be something that goes wrong. There can always be something you're like, you can't believe that happened. But by and large, you do have to be prepared for their missile threat. We have missile defenses available. We have the SM-3s on the destroyers. We have some land-based Patriots and other at our bases in the region. So yes, we would be on force protection condition, highest possible level. People in barracks, underground, prepared for any sort of retaliation, already moving out most essential, critical personnel and platforms to prepare for such a contingency. But that goes back to the fact that if you have a target list and you are most afraid of that retaliatory capability, then you want to mitigate that from the start. You want to go after all the underground facilities where they store their missiles. If there is a launch, we will detect the launch immediately and take out the launchers. That's what the Israelis did very effectively during the 12-day war. If you see fast boats going around in the Gulf, there should be a shoot-on-sight order. Get rid of the boats. Don't hesitate. If you see anything that looks like mining, shoot the boats. Take out the port. Take out the IRGC Navy headquarters and command and control. All of those should be on the top of a target list.
Okay, so Richard,
if you are looking to do something real.
We got 4 minutes left, so I want to ask you the toughest question. Your phone rings.
Oh boy.
It's the president. Hey, Goldberg, I heard you talking to Hugh, and he was quoting me from 2 weeks ago. Things have changed. What do you want me to do, and do you really think my red line would be erased if I don't do anything? What do you want me to do, and would it really be a red line erased? What do you say to him?
Mr. President, everyone's watching. You gave your word. You decided that you were going to set a red line, which was totally appropriate. And that red line has been obliterated because in the end, these are crazy, maniacal radicals who have tried to kill you and will try to kill you again when you leave office. But you already know that. They've killed a lot of Americans and they will keep killing Americans. This is your moment in history. Strike them at their most lethal strategic threat to us long term, and then hit them in command and control and senior leadership to try to blind them, disorient them, and give the people a chance. I'm not saying that's going to guarantee it's going to be, the collapse of the regime overnight. I don't know what's going to come next. I can't guarantee you that. But I do know that this regime staying in power with the ability to lash out and reach the United States or our allies is very dangerous and very good for China and Russia. And you will do the world and the United States a great favor by taking action now.
So Bibi says the same thing. Do you want me to have Israel come along, or do you want them to stay home?
Oh, I think that if you have the aircraft carrier of the state of Israel at our disposal, that means we have 2 carrier strike groups at our disposal, actually. The entire Israeli Air Force and their clandestine and cyber capabilities inside of Iran. We don't know what they could be capable of doing. If I was the president of the United States, I would say, what are our unique capabilities against specific targets that the Israelis can't touch, that they can't have impact on? versus what are the Israelis able to do on their own and continue to contribute. I think it would be crazy not to coordinate this with the Israelis.
And then he finishes, Richard, this way. I like Erdogan. Erdogan called me. He doesn't want me to do this. He just put in a strike. He put in radar in Damascus. What do we do about Turkey?
Tell him that I hope he really loves what we've done to bring the Iraq-Turkey pipeline back online and the revenue that's creating for his regime and for his country. That there's a lot more business to be done, and hopefully he understands that the Islamic Republic of Iran, at war with the United States all these decades, people who have tried to kill me personally, me, the President of the United States, and have killed many, many, many Americans, really shouldn't be around much longer after what they've done here in the streets and what they continue to do to the United States and our allies. And I hope you understand that as a NATO ally, because we could have a great relationship, but I don't think you want to be with those guys, right?
All right, very last question. I don't think the red line's obliterated yet because there's a rationale for what he did when he did and what he said when he said, and I think it was very strategic, but it will go away by a date certain. I'm saying St. Patrick's Day. How long does he have to act, Richard, before the damage, Obama-like damage to his credibility is done?
I don't like setting a timetable on that. If he is intending to act and he is continuing to move forces into position to be able to fulfill his objectives, he should use this time to squeeze, destabilize, and disorient. That can be done in the economic realm, that can be done in the cyber realm, and then follow on with the kinetic action. So long as that's all sequenced, it's all coming together, it's all part of a strategy. The time is on his side. He should not rush something like this. It should be done correctly.
Richard Goldberg from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you. Follow Rich on X at Rich_Goldberg, at Rich_Goldberg, and visit Foundation for Defense of Democracies. That's at FDD on X as well. They've got the strongest Iran department inside the Beltway because they've got people who've actually done it, including Rich Goldberg, who's been Mr. Sanctions for a long, long time. Thank you, Rich. Coming back, don't go anywhere, America. We've got a couple more experts to have on about this, but by now you should have a fairly comprehensive grip on the Iran situation if you have been listening to every hour of every Hugh Hewitt show. Stay tuned.